lobby. Let's all go to the lobby, lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to Now Slaying, an It Slays podcast production where we break down the latest and greatest in the world of horror. I'm your not so humble host, Colton.
Hey, it's Jill.
And today on the show, we're going to be discussing Together, which was released July 30th, 2025, exclusively in theaters. Jill, I'll just kick things off simply. Were you looking forward to this one?
Oh boy. Actually, yeah, because I feel like the marketing for this movie was pretty extensive. At least like the trailers, I kept seeing them every time I went to the theater, and I was like, oh, that looks interesting. Especially because I think in the last year, Rowan had me watch this short called A Folded Ocean, I think it was called. And I was a really big fan of that. It was only like 10, 15 minutes long. And it's pretty much kind of the same premise as this movie. Like two lovers become stuck together, and it's like it's much more abstract. It's like a whole like metaphor for codependency and stuff like that.
Okay.
We really liked it. And then when I saw this in trailers, I was like, they ripped off of that idea. So I was like kind of on the fence about seeing it, but then I Googled it and apparently they didn't rip it off. You know, it's just a coincidence. I guess, you know, there's only so much you can do with that concept and whatever. So I also love Alison Brie, so I was excited to see her in a horror movie. And I don't know, it looked good. I didn't have like high expectations for it, but it was something that I definitely wanted to check out. So yeah, I was pretty excited. How about you?
Yeah, similarly, I was looking forward to this one as well. This was, I think it debuted at Sundance much earlier in the year, and the audience there kind of lost their minds over it. And it's the classic horror thing where it incites a bit of a bidding war. I hear A24 and Neon are getting interested in acquiring it, and this one, Neon won out. So I was definitely looking forward to it just in terms of like the distribution behind it, the pedigree. And then after hearing that it was body horror and we're coming like hot off the heels of The Substance from last year, kind of feels like a little bit of a moment in body horror. So yeah, I was looking forward to it as well. Alison Brie, I mean, I've been a fan of her since Community. I used to, you know, she was excellent in that show, and I like her. I haven't seen Glow, but you were just talking about wrestling a whole bunch before we started recording. So it doesn't exactly shock me that you've seen it. But yeah, she's kind of one of those actresses that whenever she pops up, she does a great job. And she's been kind of dipping her toe into producing a little bit more recently with like Horse Girl, or I think The Rental. I think Dave Franco and her also produce. So there's been a couple of like genre movies that they've been producing together. This one is a little bit strange just because I know there was some like plagiarism kind of, what's the right word for it? Plagiarism allegations for this movie that I don't know where it'll all shake out, I guess, in the end. I think they were suing that apparently there was somebody who pitched them a script some years ago with key details that wound up making it into this movie that we can't really discuss until the spoiler section. But that was kind of the only thing that was kind of putting a dampener on this before me going to see it. I thought the trailers looked good. Like I said, the natural chemistry of the leads, or that they're an actual couple, I thought would work well for this material. So yeah, I was looking forward to checking it out. So are we going to be raving about this one together? Well, before we get into that, let's throw it on over to the trailer.
Mel? I think something's happening to us.
Listen to what you're saying.
The pull, the thirst in your bones.
Together was written and directed by Michael Shanks, and the story is as follows. Years into their relationship, Tim and Millie find themselves at a crossroads when they move to the countryside, abandoning all that is familiar in their lives except each other. With tensions already flaring, a nightmarish encounter with a mysterious, unnatural force threatens to corrupt their lives, their love, and their flesh. Now, here on Now Slaying, we like to keep things relatively spoiler-free up front before getting into the more in-depth, spoiler-filled discussion. So, Jill, what are your spoiler-free thoughts on Together?
Killing me here. Well, I thought it, like I said, I came in here with not high expectations after already seeing A Folded Ocean, which I expected to be kind of superior for being, taking this material, doing kind of the same thing, but more abstract and shorter. So I was kind of scared that if it were going to be stretched out into like a full feature length movie, that it could get dragged on. I didn't quite feel like it was dragged on. There were a couple beats for me that I was like, I could have done without that. Maybe I'll talk about them later. But for the most part, I really enjoyed it and it exceeded my expectations. Actually, also, my theater was like pretty packed.
Oh, yeah?
Was yours?
I went to see it on Regatta Day, so it was like a Wednesday afternoon, or well, it wasn't the afternoon, but it was an early evening showing. And now I'd say there was like a dozen people. I will say, just since we're on it, this was one of the worst theater experiences for me that I've ever had, or at least in recent memory. There was this obnoxious couple that came in and they sat like 2 seats to the right of me. And, they were making themselves very comfortable. The guy was kind of talking throughout the whole movie, doing that like nerdy, oh, this wasn't in the trailer, or oh, that doesn't make much sense sort of shit. The entire movie. His date, she took off her shoes, stretched her bare feet out on the seats like in front of her. So I just had, little toes in my peripheral vision the entire time. They were just big buckets of popcorn, nachos, folks. So they were eating for at least the first 45, 50 minutes. And then, after she was also texting and on her phone and whatnot, she just started burping out loud and laughing at whenever she would burp. So I got up and I stormed right the fuck past them, and I went right up to like the very front of the theater to get as far away from these people as I could because they were driving me crazy. And it was the sort of thing where if it was any other screening, I probably would have just said something. But I was in a screening with like a bunch of couples is kind of what it felt like. And I was just like the one weird guy alone in the middle of the theater.
No.
So I was like, I'm not going to say anything here. I just, I removed myself from the situation. But yeah, I don't know. Probably about a dozen people, I would say, overall in mine.
Okay. First of all, that's infuriating. And I would not have the composure because I'm someone who does like yell at people at theaters if they're being really annoying.
I do as well, but these people were so obnoxious and like so comfortable and so like at home on their own couch that I felt like it just would have started a fight. It's just when they're this obnoxious, they definitely would have been screaming back at me for sure.
What a great date night movie, for real. But yeah, my theater was pretty packed. It was nice to see because apart from that, the only movie I've seen recently that had a packed theater was Superman, and that's to be expected from like a superhero movie. So it was cool to see this. People were behaving, so I didn't have to worry about that. But yeah, back to my spoiler-free thoughts. Because the theater was so packed, people were also like very emotive. I feel like this movie is also a dark comedy.
It is, yeah.
And it's not trying to be funny most of the time. I feel like when people were like laughing at it, it wasn't trying to be funny. It was very subtle. There were beats where you could tell they were trying to be funny, but it was the other beats where they weren't trying, where people were like really finding it funny. And I'll probably talk about some of those moments later. But like you said, body horror has been having a big moment with the Substance. And I love this combination of body horror with something kind of sensual. The mixture of like something disgusting and then something kind of sexy and romantic together is, I don't know, chef's kiss. I love that kind of stuff. And also it's very realistic. Like you get to see the ins and outs of a relationship, like the ugly parts of it, because their relationship, I don't know if I should say much, but it's very realistic. Like it's not doing well. So I don't know. I felt like I could really relate to it because I'm like going through a divorce right now. So I was like in my feels about some of that stuff. But yeah, I thought the acting was amazing. Obviously, like you said, the chemistry between Dave Franco and Alison Brie was off the charts. And I think that really made it work. You do need to have that in a movie like this. And also, I got like Color Out of Space vibes from this. Did you?
How so?
Okay.
Oh, okay. I can see with one small aspect, I guess, but I'm curious if it's something that you can mention in the spoiler-free section.
I'll talk about it later. How about I'll
okay.
talk about it later. But I got I thought it was going to go in a Lovecraftian kind of way, and it didn't, I guess. But it did have some twists and turns, I'll say that. But yeah, it was a fun little movie. It was better than I expected. People were gasping at how disgusting and creepy it was, and also laughing at how funny it was. So, it kind of goes all over the place. It's funny, it's gross, it's romantic or sensual at times. So it kind of, if you're into that, you might like it. But tell me, what are your spoiler-free thoughts, Colton?
Yeah, in some regards, I've had a bit of a different experience than you with this movie. The main thing basically being that I was hoping for me that the chemistry between the leads was going to work, and for whatever reason, I think it's Dave Franco in the movie, to be fair, but there's just something that's off. And to be fair, Dave Franco is playing this man-child kind of loser sort of character. But he also has a lot of kind of monologues in the movie about I don't know, the power of romance, or about kind of soulmates, existentialism, or basically these concepts bigger than the sense of self. And he also has a lot of pieces where he has to trauma dump that for whatever reason, when he was doing that, it didn't really hit for me, or I just thought that Alison Brie was so much better in the scene that he kind of rang a little bit false. So I wonder what their relationship actually is in person, or were they playing kind of archetypes of their own relationship, or were they playing against type completely? Because when I was watching it, there was just some parts of it that rang a little bit false for me. But all in all, I do agree with kind of what you're saying, that it was a fun time. I enjoyed myself. I will say that my audience, since it was so sparse, they weren't very emotive or into it, or at least they weren't verbally so, other than, the couple of people next to me narrating the movie. But it's just, this movie for me, I thought it started off really strong. It had a great cold open. I thought a lot of what they were doing in the first 30-40 minutes, even though it was a little bit slower, I actually really enjoyed kind of the treading around the edges of trying to figure out what's happening here, and also not being able to believe your partner that something's happening to them. I thought it was creating a really good rift that I was enjoying. But as the movie goes on, obviously, with just as a movie like this goes, speaking vaguely, it starts to kind of over-explain some things a little bit too much. And I also think in the third act, it kind of starts to veer into a lot of dark comedy, to which, when you're in a theater and no one's really reacting to these jokes, it makes them miss even more. So that was kind of the thing for me. I really enjoyed probably the first half, and the second half got a little bit more rocky, even though there was some great moments of body horror in that second half that I thought was a lot of fun. This is also a little bit of a weird one to discuss in the spoiler-free section, just because things like, let's say, the cinematography. I can't really remember if there was anything remarkable about it. I think it was all, good. Technically it was competent, but it's not stuff that I'd basically be like, oh, you have to go see it. The sound design here was insane. Or you have to go see it. This specific practical effect is amazing. Outside of setting a really good atmosphere and having some good jump scares throughout it, it's the sort of thing that I can't really talk about too much in a spoiler-free section. It's kind of I've already said everything. I enjoyed myself. I think if you saw the trailer, you kind of get basically exactly what the trailer is pitching. And, outside of my audience being terrible, I did enjoy the ride with the movie. But it's just not one that kind of bears much discussion, because it's so specific about different beats or different scenes that I think is where a lot of the fun of the movie is. Yeah.
I mean, before we go into the spoiler section, I just want to say, I agree with you. It was very captivating for me in I will say, the first 2/3 of it, probably. And near the end, when they start to reveal stuff, I was like, I don't know if I really wanted it to go this way, or if I wanted them to explain this to me. But I do think they had a little bit of restraint. I feel like they could have explained it more, and that would have really brought it down for me if they did go that route. But yeah, I think I just wanted it to be something else that it wasn't. and I was expecting it to go there. But yeah, the first 2/3 of it were really good. When you don't really know what is happening, that's when this movie really shines.
I think this is also the sort of premise that you don't really need a clean explanation as to why it's happening. Like the movie, there's a very limited cast. There's, I think, Alison Brie, Dave Franco, a neighbor, and then a phone or a friend that kind of pops up on video calls every now and then to basically be like, man, this guy's kind of a loser, or this guy kind of sucks. And that's about it. There's basically like 4 people in this movie. Yeah. So it's the sort of thing where I don't know if you really have to create a greater universe or greater reasons of like, oh, maybe the same thing has happened to other people before. It's kind of like this could just be a weird occurrence,
one-off,
an anomaly, a one-off thing that's happened. And we don't really need to explain why it's happening. It's just it's happening in this couple's relationship, and whether or not it's actually happening or if it's metaphorical, you know, in terms of us when we're watching it, I think would have been fine. This movie definitely goes a step further and tries to explain it. It doesn't go crazy. You know, it's not like a huge 15-minute info dump or anything, but it's like, I don't know if I really needed it.
It's less metaphorical, especially after watching like A Folded Ocean, which was pure metaphor. This does more explaining and it goes in a different direction. I also just wanted to say one more thing. You're talking about Dave Franco's character. He is a big loser, but it kind of worked for me because like I believe that he's a big loser, and like the way that he's portraying it to me kind of works. I don't know. It worked for me. I liked the way that he was kind of shitty.
Yeah, I like some of it, but it's hard to get into the specifics. Like, let's say just going with the childhood trauma. He does like a back-to-back childhood trauma dump early in the movie that involves, let's say, rats, you know? And it's kind of like, oh, this is why this smell of rats upsets me. But then also, after I explain this, I'm going to also trauma dump some more. And it winds up being like the guy's just giving like a 4-minute monologue on, I don't know, smells and rats and decay and whatnot. And it's just, I don't know, stuff like that doesn't work for me with the loser musician who hasn't had a gig in years. It's just like,
I don't know if the rat thing like went anywhere either.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like there's aspects of that we can get into in the spoiler section to some degree, but it is like outside of, I will just say, a rat king, for example, existing in, you know, in nature. Well, that's what it's called when all the rats accidentally get like balled up by their tails.
Are you for real?
Yeah. It's called a rat king, and basically it gets mixed up and they all just kind of eat each other or starve to death.
How do you know this?
It's a spoiler for something else is why I know it, but
all right.
It's a spoiler for a very popular HBO TV series is why I know of what a rat king is. And if you know the series, you know, but it is something that exists in nature. So when that came up, I said, okay, that is a cool idea of, let's say, flesh merging together, or basically the proximity to one another. You can't escape, right? All the tails are bound together. Like, that's neat. But yeah, in terms of how it relates to his childhood trauma and how then it jumps to the next specific aspect of that even more upsetting childhood trauma was just parts that I was just, for his character, it just rang false. Then obviously he's, well, not obvious, but he's kind of the character who is experiencing this phenomena for the first 40 minutes. So he's given a lot of more difficult material in terms of just having to play very like over the top and kind of crazy and almost in a trance like state for a lot of it. That once again, it was just like some of the acting, or maybe just even what he was having to do to portray that. It just felt a little silly at times to me, I guess. But
I gotcha.
But would you recommend people rush to theaters, check this one out?
Rush to theaters. I guess I'm trying to think of what else is like really playing right now.
Superman, Fantastic Four,
The Home.
The Home.
Actually, if you're trying to go to the theater right now, and I don't know if this is a date night movie for you, unless you're a certain kind of person. If you're like me, this might be a good date night movie. Anything by Neon, because I feel like anything by Neon is a date night movie for a certain kind of person. I don't know. I thought it was really fun. I brought my friends to go see this, and my friend next to me, she was like shrieking and laughing. And I apologized to her after. I was like, I am so sorry for like making you come to this, but she loved it. So I don't know. It is kind of shocking at times. It's pretty grotesque. But like I said, I've said it all before. It's funny. It's a dark comedy kind of body horror. If you're into that, go see it. If you're not, I don't know, wait for it to come out on streaming. But yeah, I do recommend it. I thought it was really fun. But I've seen on Letterboxd not a lot of people share the same sentiment, at least in my friend group. But it's all relative. What do you think? Do you recommend it?
Yeah, I think check it out if you got a date. I think I kind of agree with you. For listeners of our podcast, you know if you're this sort of body horror sicko, and it is very much like a date night movie. If you're flying solo, I would say probably just check it out on streaming when it comes out, because for me, when I was in the theater, the audience just didn't react enough to kind of make it feel like this must-see communal experience. Maybe if I happened to see it a little bit later in the week, or, a more sold-out screening, it may have been a little bit more fun. But like something like The Substance, when I saw that 2 or 3 times in theaters, every single time, even if there's 10 people in the theaters, there's 5 or 6 of them freaking out at certain scenes. This didn't really have that sort of reaction from my audience. So it's the sort of thing I think you can kind of get most of what the movie's doing if you just check it out on streaming. But, if you got someone to drag along with you, sure, check it out in theaters. So yeah, we're kind of both recommending this one to check it out in theaters if you have a date. And with that, I think it's time to cut to our spoiler discussion for Together. We are now in our spoiler discussion for Together, so if you've not seen Together, it's time to tune out and come back once you've seen the movie, or keep listening if you simply don't care. Jill, was there anything you wanted to dive headfirst in right away in the spoiler section? I mean, I kind of got everything written out in chronological order, but that kind of makes it a little bit more boring, I think, to go through by beat.
Are you insinuating that there's something that I am going to dive into headfirst?
I feel like, just knowing you... I feel like the bathroom scene might want to...
It's the dick.
Yeah.
It's the dick shot. Yeah. I gasped. I literally was like, oh no, they showed a penis.
Well,
most
the shaft.
Of a penis.
The shaft
they showed
getting
a whole
stretched
shaft.
out a little bit.
That was crazy work to me. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
I kind of cackled at that moment as well.
What a scene. Let's talk about that scene. I love it. I love that it was so weird. First of all, that they are in like a high school, like public bathroom, first of all, having sex. And they're going to fuse together at this point after
of course. Yeah,
everything that's happened.
We've all been waiting for it.
It's a bad idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're waiting for it. And I think it's hilarious that they get stuck that way, and it's like painful, but they can't like help themselves, and then like the whole embarrassment after, and just like the way that it's starting to affect their lives and make their lives kind of crumble. Like she could lose her job. Like that's super. Like, I'm a teacher, so yeah. I'm like, this is like a huge no. Like you don't do this kind of stuff at work. You don't. You actively try to avoid that stuff. So and my friend sitting next to me, she's also a teacher. So we were both just like, oh, frig, this is awful. But it was very entertaining and shocking. I will say that.
I agree. I love this scene. This was probably one of the highlight scenes of the movie. And I know when they've recently showed this movie, they passed out lube, and it had something to do with like, for in the bathroom afterwards or something. Like this is kind of like the scene that they were hinting at to a lot of critics and whatnot, that it's a lot of fun. And I agree that it's a lot of fun, but in like a sick, like, this is so fucked up sort of way, which is what you want from this sort of movie. Like for the entire movie, it's like Alison Brie is trying to initiate sex with Dave Franco at multiple times throughout it, but he always has excuses, and he doesn't want to, he never wants to get into it. So this is kind of the moment where all this pent up sexual frustration kind of comes boiling over, and it happens in a kind of gross bathroom at a high school, and then they get stuck like on top of one another, and it's it's just a great scene. I thought it was a lot of fun. It was one of the scenes that was built up like appropriately throughout the movie, that we all knew eventually they were gonna fuck, and we knew when that happened their bits were gonna get stuck together. It was a good payoff. I thought it was a fun scene, and then the fact that the creepy, weird neighbor comes in afterwards, who we all kind of feel like he did like Alison Brie to a certain degree, but then it was also maybe just Dave Franco's insecurities. So it was just, I thought it all worked out very well. I mean, it's maybe not what's happening in the scene itself, but it's a good scene is what I'm trying to say.
Listen, you got to get it in when you can, especially if you're not getting it in for a long time. I don't even know if it was a high school because they're in like a really small town, right? It seems like a K-12
it felt,
sort of
it
situation.
felt more like just the kid who comes in didn't read high school to me. But you said high school earlier, so I was running with it.
Did I? Oh, I'm so sorry. But yeah, that's what makes it worse is that there's a kid. Yeah.
So
what else?
With that, outside of the fun of just the body horror and whatnot, I got to get into this weird joint bedroom nightmare sequence earlier in the movie, but then also about how it does all this like trauma dumping with the parents. This was this was a part of the movie that I'm not really sure why it was in there, other than some cheap jump scares earlier on. There's a couple of nightmare sequences where essentially it's like two beds fused together, and then there's a woman sitting up with kind of glowing eyes across the room, or he pulls the sheets up over him, and then his mother's face, or we don't know it's his mother, but this creepy woman's face comes up. There's another scene, I think, when he's walking by a room and he sees it in there. There's this recurring motif for the first probably 15-20 minutes of just like creepy woman in a room, and then it gets revealed that at some point, I guess maybe his mother passed at some point. I'm not quite sure on the specifics, but essentially that as a kid he was living in a house where his father was dead and rotting, and the stench of him would kind of permeate out through the room. But his mom would go and sleep in the same bed with his father, I guess, until eventually she lost her mind, or until he was discovered. And outside of like just the concept of like, oh, not wanting to have an empty bed next to you, like not wanting to lose that person, which obviously thematically is somewhat relevant for this movie. I'm not sure why why it was such a prevalent thing in the beginning of this movie, outside of a few jump scares.
I have a couple of things to say about that. The first thing was when I saw it, it instantly reminded me of like the parents dying in Midsummer. Like that scene, which I always found to be kind of horrific for some reason, but also like, Hereditary.
The Midsummer, it's just, that starts off with like an incredible gut punch. It's just so horrific, right? This is revealed probably 20 minutes in the movie.
Out of nowhere.
And once again, it comes off the back of a monologue about rats rotting in the ceiling and kind of cooking your rat with a bedroom light and this sort of shit.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, so it's just like, it's a hat on a hat. It's like we already kind of have this disgusting burning flesh rat rotting thing. And then it's like, oh, also my father was dead for a long time and also rotting. And then also my mom's dead as well now. And it's just, I don't know. It was, there's too many layers of trauma dumping, I think. Just too much.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. First of all, I also wanted to mention, have you ever read William Faulkner's A Rose for Emily short story?
By Faulkner, I've only read, what is it? The Sound and the Fury.
Okay.
Oh, and there's another one as well, but I can't remember it right now. Okay,
in A Rose for Emily, a similar thing happens where this, like, she's perceived as this crazy lady, right? Kind of the same thing as Dave Franco's mother. And I forget if it's her husband or her dad dies. Then I think it's her husband, and she like sleeps next to his dead body, and then like people start to complain about the stench, and it's very similar. And I'm wondering how much was influenced by that. I love it. It's one of my like favorite short stories. But also, the trauma dumping. I think what they're trying to do there, and I don't know if it's effective in that. They're just like trying to give more layers of trauma and like kind of give reasons for Alison Brie's character Millie to like not believe him. And so that's like kind of a driver for the movie where when things start to happen, she doesn't believe him. She's kind of like gaslighting him, but he has like all of these issues and trauma. I don't know. I kind of liked it because it was scary and it did really freak me out. Another scene that really freaked me out, and it kind of had supernatural elements, is when they're like in separate bedrooms, they lock themselves in different bedrooms, and she starts like crawling backwards, like her body's like contorting and stuff. That shit scares the fuck out of me. Like, I cannot deal with like contortionist stuff, so I was freaking out, and so was everybody else in my theater. That scene was crazy.
With those scenes, I like that scene as well. The hallway scene, where essentially is probably the last big moment where they're getting pulled together before they figure out this whole conceit of muscle relaxers and whatever else.
Oh my God.
But
also insane.
But that sequence was a lot of fun. But I wonder why Dave Franco didn't have any contortionist stuff. Why was it only Alison Brie who was all flexible and bendy?
Maybe he don't move that way.
True, but I think I would have liked to see, like, I don't know, maybe his shoulder pops out of place, or, you know, his knee moves in a weird way. Like, just a little bit more grotesque aspects here. He was just kind of getting pulled on his back the whole time, and I mean, you know, what was going on with her was far more horrific. But there's a sequence with her, I think it's like the night before this sequence, where essentially he's up in his room and he's, I don't know, noodling around on guitar and not really writing anything. And then essentially there's a good jump scare of her at the door, and she smashes her head against the office window. I thought that was a really effective scare. And then once again, kind of him trying to figure out if they're linked together, seeing like if he gets closer to her, does it push her apart or does it pull her together? Just kind of the specifics and the kind of the dance of the scene, the blocking of the scene, and how it was being reflected on the other side of the glass, but also like clearly, you know, affecting his partner in a horrible way. I thought that was a very effective scene as well.
I mean, speaking of cinematography, there were some like really good wide shots, like where you know something's gonna pop up. I think there's one in that scene where he's like at the computer or whatever, and then she shows up and like smacks her head against it. I wasn't sure if that was going to be her also, because they kind of like, I don't know if it's just me picking up on this, but I feel like they were hinting that it could have been something supernatural. Like you hear kind of like footsteps in the house, and I'm like, is somebody else in the house? Because there's that missing couple. Like, what is happening? I felt like this was going in a different direction at times, and it kind of scared me even more because then she showed up and I wasn't expecting it to be her. Yeah,
for me, it was the sort of thing where I feel like this movie, up until a certain point, was casting a lot of lines in terms of what this could be. Like it like, you know, once again, that kind of trauma that trauma sequence similar to Midsummer is setting up a very different sort of elevated horror movie. These missing hikers in the woods that you're hearing noises in your house and creaks in your new house. Oh, what if they're in here? It's a different sort of horror movie. Creepy Neighbors is a different sort of horror movie. It was just, it was, and this was the funny thing, a lot of it was kind of working for me. I was enjoying kind of the fun and games of it. It was more so in retrospect when everything was revealed that I was like, I don't know if any of this really mattered. In the end, it's kind of like, if it's just going to be a cult and you both drank some water at different points in the movie, you know, it's I don't know why the movie was really setting up all these different supernatural or different explanations for what was happening, other than some cheap scares along the way.
Yeah, we gotta talk about that, because I feel like there was a lot of build up, and then at the end it kind of fizzled out like a deflated balloon when you find out about like the cult. For me, it reminded me of two things. I talked about this earlier. I alluded to the color out of space. Well, in the beginning, when you see that bell, like that big bell that into the ground, I for some reason thought it was like some kind of like radioactive chemical like dump or something like that. So I was thinking, oh, this is something from space and it's contaminating the water, right? Like in Color to Space. And then if you remember in the Color to Space, was it the alpacas and like the mom and the son who like fused together? Yeah. It looked very similar. So I wonder also if they were influenced a little bit from that movie. I kind of got cosmic horror vibes also, because I read a book recently that was about this cult who supported like a Lovecraftian kind of old god who was like stuck in this mine shaft. And they had this like abandoned church above it. And like people in the town were all in this cult, like trying to sacrifice people to this god so that they could like awaken him and bring him back. So I really thought this was going to go in that direction where they're like, I really thought this church was kind of an altar to this like old god and something like that. So I was really disappointed when it was just like a cult for no reason that was like really into like this like Play-Doh idea they talked about like everyone starting out as like a combined person and then like splitting in
having
half.
2 faces and 4 legs, 4 arms, whatever it is. Or
like what is the reason? Like what is the reason?
Other than, once again, just kind of metaphorically or thematically being like, you have a soulmate, you have someone that you're attached to, and this movie is called Together, and it's going to be about them physically recombining.
I don't know.
But yeah, like, once again, just kind of someone mentioning that Play-Doh story in the movie, to me would have been like, oh, okay, that's enough. You know, that's hinting at, oh, maybe this happened at some point in history or whatnot.
Yeah.
We didn't need this cult and this water. And I do agree that the way it all looks is very cosmic horror. Like, you know, the swirls and the set design there is not made by human hand, you know.
Yes.
Just similarly, like when he passes out that night and he's having the nightmare and all the walls and everything are undulating and you hear like the thing in the darkness and all this sort of thing, right? It's definitely more cosmic at that moment, where once again it kind of speaks to the lack of kind of precision with the horror and like setting up. But I did like a lot of the effects at that point in the movie.
Yeah, the effects also are like really grotesque. I like that.
I wanted to talk about the thing. The hikers merged together down in the hole. This is probably like the big practical effect in the movie, I would say. I mean, I was hearing about all these people freaking out at Sundance. Oh my God, it's horrific. It's grotesque, you know. People mentioning the substance, and this movie got nothing on the substance in terms of, well, anything, but also like body horror and whatnot, and the grotesqueness of it isn't there either. But I will say, this one creature, which is kind of the 2 hikers merged together, you can tell that like the husband or the male figure in the relationship has been killed, because it's kind of like you got the knife in his neck and his eyes are milky and his limbs are limp, but it's still like they're fused together. I thought it was a real good horror creation. I did like the look of it. I almost wish it was there for a moment longer. It was very, it's there and it's done. We move on. We just run away from it. But I thought it was a cool creature.
I did as well. And, I thought it was, I kind of would have wanted more of that a little bit. Like I guess they're trying to show that this is what you become if you don't accept it and let it happen to you, sort of deal. And I was really expecting that to happen to them. I
think I would have preferred that, to tell you the truth.
Yes, because that's the thing with a substance. It happens to a character you care about, right? So it hits a lot harder. When it happens to these random hikers, it's like, okay, that's cool, but like, I don't know, it doesn't hit as hard. And the other thing that kind of bugged me is that I don't think they're soulmates. Like, they kind of hate each other. They're not in a functioning relationship. It's not going well. These are 2 people who should not be together. And maybe you could argue that adds to like the horror that now they're one person, they're stuck together now, which I also like wasn't expecting at the end when you get the shot where they're literally one person. I was like, what?
Awful. It's so bad. And that's what I'm saying. Like, this movie loses me pretty quickly within the last, 10 to 15 minutes. But that final shot is awful. Like, it's so bad.
We would have preferred the slimy, 2-headed, like, dead thing.
100%. Or you cut the movie 10 seconds earlier where we get another terrible shot of, like, bad VFX of their bodies kind of merging together. But at least that one for me was okay. At least it's kind of monstrous, and you're playing literally the Hereditary ending music, and I was rolling my eyes so fucking hard at that. That when they're merging together and it's kind of monstrous, but kind of also like of another plane, like this is like otherworldly, and you got to evoke the Hereditary music, and they're merging together. I was like, okay, well now we just pan away and we show that the last post on social media, whatever of theirs, was lame to end the movie. For whatever reason, like going to when the parents show up, and then you get this unholy abomination of CG, AI, whatever mixture of Alison Brie and Dave Franco answering the door.
Non-binary.
I hated it.
They should have just like cut it, like showing the house being, all set up for them to come, and then the parents like opening the door, and then like end it. Like I could have done without seeing whatever that was. when they open the door.
Yeah, I agree. That was a very bad ending.
Also, when they were playing Two Become One by the Spice Girls, when they were like merging, I was like kicking my feet, like giggling, because I thought it was hilarious, because I love that whole album. I was a Spice Girls kid, and I knew right away when they played that song. I was like, this is really fucking funny, actually.
And when I was talking about the plagiarism allegations, that was one of the specific things in the guy's pitch that he specifically cited, that he mentioned to them about using the Spice Girls to become one as like a comedic capper to this moment in the movie. And then when they passed on the pitch and somehow it resurfaced years later in this movie, that was like one of his big moments of like, yeah, you just stole this. So
I get it, but
yeah, I thought it was good. I thought that was a fun moment as well. But once again, outside of the visuals, and then about how the music kind of fades away and turns into the Hereditary music, like it is literally the music at the end of Hereditary, where I forget his name now, but it's like Nat Wolff, or Alex Wolff's character, is becoming like Payman, right? Where you got like everyone kneeling to him and he's being like exalted up and everyone's shouting "Hail Payman." It's playing the exact same music at that moment, where it's like, you know, once again, he's ascending to this other plane. And I thought I couldn't believe that it was like reusing the same music from such a like prominent.
Is there plagiarism like accusations for Hereditary from this movie? Do you know?
No.
Okay.
Why? You feel like this and Hereditary are very similar, or?
I feel like there are beats that are very similar, maybe intentionally so. I don't know.
I think a lot of people were calling this like a pale imitation in certain regards, but I didn't see it like one-to-one like that, just because of the body horror and codependency aspect of it. Like, of course, the hidden cult and people manipulating, you know, the ultimate result of the movie, and then specifically the needle drop. I think you can probably argue some of it, but yeah, it's just, for me, I mean, we would have to have someone having like an allergic reaction to peanuts and losing their head, you know, in this movie for me to be okay, plagiarism, you know?
Another scene that I thought was really funny was when she's at the neighbor's house and her partner, Tim, is that his name in the movie?
Tim, yeah. That's
Tim.
Dave Franco's character, yeah.
Yeah, he like pops up in the window and she's like, oh, fuck, you gotta like get out of here. That was hilarious. Like, to me.
Yeah, like a lot of that stuff, it just winds up being like too silly in the movie that it starts to lose me. For example, the biggest moment for me, and this will let you know if you're going to be on the movie's wavelength for the last 20 to 30 minutes or not, is are you laughing when they're crushing up the muscle relaxers or whatever on the floor and snorting it, and they're all like, you know, licking it and lapping it up? If you're laughing at that, if you're laughing at that scene, then you will probably be on board with the rest of it. I was like, oh, this is like over the top, like it kind of jumped the shark. And then it's not only that scene, it's the scene immediately after it where essentially they're merged together and you're getting the payoff for the saw of like, oh, yeah, that Alison Brie, Millie, is going to, you know, cut off basically the webbing in between both of their arms that are sticking them together. And the movie, instead of kind of lingering in this and showing the body horror and once again, like the gore and viscera of this moment, she starts to cut into it, and then it does a comedic cut of them on opposite sides of the kitchen, kind of both like visually like shaken up. And that's, once again, the movie saying this is turning into more of like a comedy movie and less of a body horror movie. And for me, those sorts of beats just didn't really work, I guess.
You would have preferred to see all the gore and viscera.
A little bit more of it. Yeah, a little bit more. Because, I mean, after cutting through that, you'd have someone like bleeding out on the floor. It'd be very chaotic. Yeah. And then maybe after you see all the gore and how messed up it was, maybe then you can have the comedic beat of, It was just, it was so abrupt, especially when, once again, in the marketing for this movie, it does sell kind of the correct movie, but the saw is an aspect that's built up in the marketing as well. So when it was coming up, I was like, oh, this is going to be horrific. And it's not. It's like, it's just a little, and then they cut like after 1 second. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I was kind of happy they didn't show that, because I would have, I don't know, like cutting through skin.
It's gross.
I don't know. Yeah, it makes me feel a certain way, but I agree. It would have made it like more horrific.
The only other really note that I have here for the movie is I really liked the dog cold open, and this was the sort of movie I was hoping we were getting. I thought this movie, when it was starting off, it was so confident. with what it was doing, where it's essentially there's no dialogue, it's just music, it's just vibes. There's two dogs in a hole, they're captured, or they're rescued, and they're just looking at one another with like creepy music playing, and then finally you hear them kind of merging in the dark, and you get a really quick cut of something horrific, but you can't even really believe your eyes because it's so quick and it's also so like dimly lit that
So
I was like, yes.
Yeah.
I was like, yes, this is the sort of movie that I want. And I do think the movie got there at certain moments, but I think the cold open might have been the most competent kind of example of what this movie was going for, or at least what I wanted going into the movie. I thought it was very effective and very like unnerving way to start the movie.
I think they could have lingered, like you said, on more uncomfortable moments, and maybe the like dark comedy would pay off more for some people. I think it could have been more gross. Like it was gross, but I think like horrific and uncomfortable, it could have leaned more into that for sure.
The one last thing I'll mention is just the specifics of Millie becoming part of this. I think it's kind of lame that she just drinks water at Jamie's house and then she's brought into all this. It winds up being like obviously the cult, figuring out how to put people together, or like kind of having these machinations behind the scenes. But I don't know. I wish there was something else, because once I realized, because for the first 45 minutes, hour of the movie, I was like, wait, but all this is just happening to Tim, right? It's just all happening to Dave Franco. How is this eventually going to start happening to Alison Brie? And the fact that it's just kind of the creepy neighbor, and he's like, oh, do you want some wine or do you want something to drink? She's like, oh, water's fine. And you're like, oh, great. And then immediately it starts happening after that. That was something for me that I thought was a little lame.
I actually didn't catch on to that because I was under the impression, I was actually confused why she wasn't going through the same stuff as Tim was, because I thought she drank that water in the cave.
And this is a bad beat in the movie as well, where they're both drinking out of like similar wine bottles, but hers has a little bit of real water in it, and his has the gross cave water in it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just clunky, right? Like once again, it's just kind of, why couldn't we have just had it starting to affect her at a certain point? Once again, it's this weird force that's bringing them together anyways, that there's not really any rational explanation behind it. Why does it have to be something in the water? I don't know. It's just goofy.
Yeah, what is it about the water? That wasn't explained, but I don't know.
No.
I will say not the downfall, but like the part of the movie that I didn't enjoy was when she was at the neighbor's house and getting the kind of like explanation for everything. That was a
watching
little
the wedding
too much.
video and
and then him coming out with his like little monologue. I was like, this would have been so much better if he was just like a creepy neighbor and that was it.
I agree. I didn't need any of that explanation. I did think that the actor who was cast was pretty good. He had like this uncanny valley look about him that I could kind of see that, oh, okay, maybe his like the way his face was just laid out, it looked like, oh, maybe it could be it's composited from two people. Who knows? It was just a weird looking guy. He was kind of gangly and I don't know, off-putting in a certain way.
He was so off-putting, but he was also like really friendly. So I was like, okay, maybe he's just like a really friendly guy and he's looking out for her or something like that. But yeah.
Well, with that, do you have any other notes that you want to discuss before we get in the rating list?
I don't think so.
So if you're new to the podcast, our review rubric is nay, okay, yay, or slay. So Jill, what would you give Together?
Yeah, I am going to give Together a strong yay, because there were parts that didn't work for me, like the part with like the neighbor and like kind of the reveal. I feel like it didn't really need that. And like you said, like the opening was very competent, and I think the first 2/3 were very competent, and I don't know, it just got a little too watered down or something for me near the end. And like you said, like with that saw, it could have been more gory. They could have made it more uncomfortable. We didn't talk about the hair scene where they wake up in the middle of the night and he's like choking on her hair. That was like so off-putting and gross and scary, and I really like that scene. But I feel like they could have done more with that kind of stuff, but I did really enjoy it. I thought it was really fun. It was sensual at times. It was disgusting. I don't know. I haven't seen anything quite like it in terms of all the things that it does, like being funny, being scary, being romantic, whatever. So yeah, I would recommend going to see it, and I think it's a good neon movie. What about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I came off in the discussion as a lot more negative on this movie than I actually feel about it, because at the end of the day, I still enjoyed it. I do think it was a bit messy. I do think in hindsight, a lot of these different forays in like dipping their toes into different horror genres or trying to kind of explain a lot of these aspects that wind up being red herrings is kind of irritating. And they wind up just being, the explanation is like, oh, it's vaguely thematically relevant, or it's just scary, or, you know, a jump scare. So that sort of shit doesn't really work for me. And I do think the movie gets very, very silly as it goes on. And specifically from that one scene when they start crushing everything up and snorting it to the end of the movie, it's just like more of like slapsticky comedy at moments, which to me, it's just, that's not what I wanted.
It's called diazepam now.
Yeah, I heard.
You heard.
So yeah, I mean, I'm gonna side on a yay as well. I do think it was good overall. It's just I much preferred the movie that was presented to me within the first 2 minutes, and then much preferred the movie that was presented to me for the next 40 minutes or so. And the movie that it became in the last hour, you know, I can kind of take it or leave it. And the movie that it became within the last 2 minutes, I don't want to watch it again.
We're not going to talk about it anymore.
No, we're not going to talk about that. But yeah, it's going to be a yay from me.
Nice.
So if you're not following us already, you can do so at It's Lays Podcast. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Slasher, Letterboxd, Threads, Bluesky. Pretty much if there's a social media, we're probably there at It's Lays Podcast. And if you want to help support the show financially, like our horror hounds Holly, Nicholas, Mark, Steven, Dan, Brian, Trevor, and James, gain access to the Patreon exclusive show Stream Screams and get episodes of the main show 48 hours early, be sure to head on over to patreon.com/itslays podcast and choose whatever tier works best for you. Jill, Two Become One, Spice Girls, shouldn't make the horrific playlist.
Yeah, I'm going to have to message Roan after this and beg him to put Spice Girls To Become One on the horrific playlist, which you can go check out on Spotify, which we update regularly, I hear. And you can catch whatever spooky tunes we got going on there.
And next time on the show, I think it's going to have to be Weapons.
Oh, yeah.
Are you checking that one out next week?
Fuck
the new,
yeah.
Yeah, the new Zach Kreger movie. Yeah, I can't wait for that one.
We'll be here.
Kind of spoiling the discussion for next time, but yeah, I can't wait to check that out next week. So, and with that, I think that about wraps things up for this episode. So until next time, I'm Colton.
And bye, it's Jill.
And as long as you keep listening, we'll keep slaying.